Yo, folks, we about to review Lex Friedman and DJ CO Neuralink. I didn't know DJ CO created the Neuralink. How much uh stuff, how much power Elon receiving about Neuralink and all of the stuff he doing. You would think Elon made it. But yeah, let's check this out by Lex Friedman, man. Y'all go sub up to Lex Friedman too.
How does Neuralink work? From the surgery to the implant to the signal and the decoding process and the human being able to use the implant to actually affect the world outside. And all of this I'm asking in the context of there's a gigantic historic milestone that Neuralink just accomplished that in January of this year, uh, putting a Neuralink implant in the first human being, Nolan. And there's been a lot of
This is a milestone to the believers, though. The religious, the people who need to be pointed in the right direction, because Nolan is just really tired of being handicapped, so to speak. So him, it, it's like on the movie Morbius. He's tired of being limited. He can only do so much, and he's in the chair all day. On the movie Morbius, he found a gene in the bats that would heal him from ASL, him and his best friend. And then they became monsters, revealing that there's a certain type of thing that come with re-engineering the cells of the body and things like that. When they took those genes from the bat, they acquired super strength, sonar vision, the ability to hear through walls, hear miles away, and things like that. That's what these people trying to implement.
to talk about there about his experience because he's able to describe all the nuance and the beauty and the fascinating complexity of that experience of everything involved. But on the technical level,
You know, because it's a certain amount of knowledge that the believers have, but that don't pertain to all of them though. All you got to do is research, and you'll find the answers.
how does Neuralink work?
Yeah, so there are three major components to the technology that we're building. One is the device, the thing that's actually recording these neural chatters. We call it N1 implant or the link. And we have a surgical robot that's actually doing an implantation of these tiny, tiny wires that we call threads that are smaller than human hair. And once everything is surgerized, you have these neural signals, these spiking neurons that are coming out of the brain, and you need.
The fibers of the Neuralink mock the hair because the hair is transporting electronic signal from the light outside, from the sun, from the moon, from any light you in a room, from
Need to have some sort of software to decode what the users intend to do with that. Um, so there's what's called a Neuralink application or B1 app that's doing that translation. It's running the very, very simple machine learning model that decodes these inputs that are neural signals and then convert it to a set of outputs that allows our participant, first participant Nolan, to be able to control a cursor on the screen.
And this is done wirelessly.
And this is done wirelessly. So we
Wirelessly proving that the brain is having signals and current running through the brain. And they want you to pick up a specific dying signal, a controlling signal. It's not the brain waves, the theta waves that we have normally. And then you see these people have some type of ailment that are getting these chips in their brain. They don't know that the detriment of giving somebody else the will of your brain and your body. And I'm saying somebody else because the data center is not in the person's home that has the Neuralink for sure. It's data systems all over the country that is receiving this, and they can make him do whatever they want him to do whenever. That's the part that they not talking about. But then again, you got these religious folks so engulfed into it that they fanned out. This is idolatry worship. This is vampirism at its finest, at its lowest. Sorry.
our implant is actually a two-part. The link has these flexible tiny wires called threads that have multiple electrodes along its length, and they're only inserted into the cortical layer, which is about 3 to 5 millimeters in a human brain, in the motor cortex region. That's where the kind of the intention for movement lies in. And we have 64 of these threads, each thread having 16 electrodes along, the span of 3 to 4 millimeters, separated by 200 microns. So you can actually record along the depth of the insertion.
64 equals what? 10, 0, 1, binary code, binary code.
And based on that signal, there's custom, integrated circuit or ASIC that we built that amplifies the neural signals that you're recording and then digitizing it, and then has some mechanism for detecting whether there was an interesting event that is a spiking event, and decide to send that or not send that through Bluetooth to an external device, whether it's a phone or a computer that's running this Neuralink application. So
Spiking event, spiking is thinking. Conjuring.
There's onboard signal processing already just to decide whether this is an interesting event or not. So there is some computational power on board in addition to the human brain.
yeah, so it does the signal processing to kind of really compress the amount of signal that you're recording. So we have a total of 1,000 electrodes, sampling at just under 20 kilohertz with 10-bit each. So
Wow.
that's 200 megabits. That's coming through to the chip from 1,000 channel simultaneous neural recording, and that's quite a bit of data. And there are technology available to send that off wirelessly, but being able to do that in a very, very thermally constrained environment that is a brain. So there has to be some amount of compression that happens to send off only the interesting data that you need, which in this particular case for motor decoding is occurrence of a spike or not, and then being able to use that to decode the intended cursor movement. So the implant itself processes it, figures out whether a spike happened or not with our spike detection algorithm, and then sends it off, packages it, send it off through Bluetooth to an external device that then has the model to decode, okay, based on these spiking inputs, did Nolan wish to go up, down, left, right, or click or right click or whatever.
All of this is really fascinating, but let's stick on the N1 implant itself. So the thing that's in the brain. So I'm looking at a picture of it. There's an enclosure.
Now, y'all see this charging coil and ferrite shield? Remember we talked about venom and the ferrofluid. And then look at this signal processing electronic. It looked like a city, a state. See the ferrofluids energy harvesting. Ferrofluids enable the harvesting of vibration energy from the environment. But in this case, it's gonna double up from the environment of your body and the outside environment. Right. Existing methods of harvesting low frequency, 100 hertz vibrations require, he said 200. He said 200 hertz. Vibrations require the use of solid resonant structures. With ferrofluids energy harvester designs no longer need solid structure. Mm. One example of ferrofluid-based energy harvesting is to place the ferrofluid inside a container, the body, to use an external mechanical vibrations to generate electricity inside a coil wrapped around the container, surrounded by a permanent magnet. These magnets would be our energy centers because our energy centers are like black holes. The head or crown being one. That's why they putting the Neurolink in the crown. Get it? Right? The ferrofluid is then first the ferrofluid is placed inside a container that is wrapped. Okay. The ferrofluid is then externally magnetized using a permanent magnet. Our energy centers or our chakras, or our kundalini. Everything has a place. This Neuralink doesn't have a place. So therefore it is gonna do negative things to you. Why they trying to explain to you that it's not. When external vibrations cause the ferrofluid to move around in the container, there is a change in magnetic flux. And this is even having to do with the thoughts that Nolan is having and everything. With respect to the coil of wire, oh, my bad. Is a change in magnetic flux with respect to the coil of wire through Faraday's law, which DJ knows of electromagnetic inducing. Voltage is induced in the coil of wire due to change in the magnetic flux. So these people no matter how they present themselves, bro, you can always tell a person's affiliation by what they are doing, what they're wearing, who they associate themselves with. Look, spacecraft propulsion, medical apps, magnetic hyperthermia. Look at it. Look at the ferrofluid in the electronic devices. Material science research. Ferrofluids can be used to image magnetic domain structures on the surface of ferromagnetic materials using a technique developed by Francis Bitter. For sure. Shit, this probably was Morbius. But remember, I was saying about Morbius. Magnetic, no. Ferrofluids can be used to image magnetic domain structures. Mechanical engineering. Ferrofluids have friction reducing capabilities. This is what they saying. The blood of the bot's gonna be fake blood. Ferrofluids are used to form liquid seals around the spinning drive shaft and hard disk. Uh, the- hold on, let's look at that again. Battery, power, electronics, and antenna. Uh, but this charging coil, ferrite shield.
There's a charging coil, so we didn't talk about the charging, which is fascinating. The battery, the power electronics, the antenna. Then there's the signal processing electronics. I wonder if there's more kinds of signal processing you can do. That's another question. And then there's the threads themselves with the enclosure on the bottom. So maybe to ask about the charging. So
Yeah.
there's a external charging device.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's an external charging device. So yeah, the second part of the implant, the threads are the ones, again, just the last 3 to 5 millimeters are the ones that are actually penetrating the cortex.
Yeah.
Rest of it is actually most of the volume is occupied by the battery, rechargeable battery. And it's about the size of a quarter. I actually have a device here if you want to take a look at it. This is the flexible thread component of it,
Wow.
and then this is the implant. So it's about the size of a US quarter. It's about 9 millimeter thick. So basically, this implant, once you have the craniectomy and the thorectomy, threads are inserted, and the hole that you created, this craniectomy, gets replaced with that. So basically, that thing plugs that hole, and you can screw in these self-drilling cranial screws to hold it in place. And at the end of the day, once you have the skin flap over, there's only about 2 to 3 millimeters that's obviously transitioning off of the top of the implant to where the screws are, and that's the minor bump that you have.
Those threads look tiny. That's incredible. That is really incredible. That is really incredible. And also, as you're right, most of the volume.
Look at how they pledging this nothing. This means nothing to society really. People don't know nothing worth knowing. People don't know nothing worth knowing, so they pledging to these people think they got things in common just because people follow what they follow. No, you don't, bro. You don't. The people that's getting this and the people that's not getting it and feel some type of way about it got two totally different things in common, bro. Well, let me rephrase that. Have nothing in common.
The actual volume is the battery.
Yeah,
Wow, this is way smaller than I realized.
they are also, the threads themselves are quite strong,
They look strong.
and the thread themselves also has a very interesting feature at the end of it called the loop, and that's the mechanism to which the robot is able to interface and manipulate this tiny hair-like structure
and they're tiny. So what's the width of a thread?
Yeah, so the width of a thread starts from 16 micron and then tapers out to about 84 micron. So, average human hair is about 80 to 100 micron in width.
This thing is amazing. This thing is amazing.
Yes, most of the volume is occupied by the battery, rechargeable lithium ion cell. And
They don't know, or they do know. This is Satanism. This is vampirism. Just for the simple fact that they telling you that it's for a different purpose, is to help the ill and the uneligible.
the charging is done through inductive charging, which is actually very commonly used. Your cell phone, most cell phones have that. Um, the biggest difference is that, for us, usually when you have a phone and you want to charge it on a charging pad, you don't really care how hot it gets. Whereas for us, it matters. There's a very strict regulation, and
See, look, this is one detriment right here. The heat. When in the body's natural processes, your body wouldn't let you. Charging would be sleep to us. That's the cool down point. This, you gotta worry about it. This is crazy. Keep watching this.
good reasons to not actually increase the surrounding tissue temperature by 2 degrees Celsius. So there's actually a lot of innovation that is packed into this to allow charging of this implant without causing that temperature threshold to reach. And even small things like you see this charging coil and what's called a ferrite shield, right? So without that ferrite shield, what you end up having when you have resonant inductive charging is that the battery itself is a metallic can, and you form these eddy currents from uh, external charger, and that causes heating, and that actually contributes to inefficiency in charging. So this ferrite shield, what it does is that it actually concentrate that field line away from the battery and then around the coil that's actually wrapped around it.
There's a lot of really fascinating design here to make it. I mean, you're integrating a computer into a complex biological system.
Yeah, there's
You integrating a computer into the supercomputer. The we are the supercomputers. Cause with that loop he just called it, placing the gap between the magnet and the shaft, be held in place by its attraction to the magnet. The fluid of magnet particles forms a barrier which prevents debris from entering the interior of the hard drive. As a being, you are already wired, but you're not hardwired. You're essentially wired, essentially connected. Nanos, nanoparticles are bad, made up. It's not the originals. Matter of fact, no such thing as nanoparticles. No such thing. If they just let us live, no such thing, bro. Friction, reducing capabilities like what he just explained. Look, cell separation. Ferrofluids conjugated with antibodies are common capture agents, such as strep, streptavidin, or rat anti-mouse, LG, RAM, space. are used in immunomagnetic separation that can efficiently isolate cells out of body fluid or cultured cells. It can also be used as a method of quantifying the pathogenicity of food, blood, or feces, a subset of cell sorting. These conjugated ferrofluids are used to bind to target cells. And y'all think that this Neurolink, this new link, is new because some beings never reached beyond 3D. And then every time beings want to go beyond 3D, they just don't know how. And with this device, this will help them do that. But a certain being can do that. It's innate. It's in its will and its power.
There's a lot of innovation here. I would say that part of what enabled this was just the innovations in the wearable. There's a lot of really, really powerful, tiny, low power microcontrollers, temperature sensors, or various different sensors, and power electronics. A lot of innovation really came in the charging coil design, how this is packaged, and how do you enable charging such that you don't really uh, exceed that temperature limit, which is not a constraint for other devices out there.
So let's talk about the threads themselves, those tiny, tiny, tiny things. So, how many of them are there? You mentioned 1,000 electrodes. How many threads are there? And what do the electrodes have to do with the threads?
Yeah, so the current instantiation of the device has 64.
I had to step away for a second. Hold on. What do you say? Hold on. But I had one when I walked away. Where you at? Where that? Where that? Right here. Yeah, see the signal processing electronics, right? What what really they don't want to tell the people is that it's crystals in there. Crystals covered by a plate, by these plates, these little plates right here. Certain type of crystals, same ones in your body. They don't want to tell you. Like like dude was saying, we crystalline. Like I'm saying, I've been saying, we crystalline beings, plasma. All of this breaks down to plasma whenever it's through. When we done, going back to the originality of it all, the origin of it all. Let's start here, but yeah, 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 man, a follower couldn't point this out because they'd be saying everything everybody else saying. But the processing, what processes signals are crystals. So now that we know that, let's move on.
Enable this was just the innovations in the wearable. There's a lot of really, really powerful, tiny, low power microcontrollers, temperature sensors, or various different sensors.
See, he don't want to say crystals. Why he not just giving us the lamest terms of how this device works? Mm, better think about it.
And power electronics. A lot of innovation really came in the charging coil design, how this is packaged, and how do you enable charging such that you don't really exceed that temperature limit, which is not a constraint for other devices out there.
So let's talk about the threads themselves, those tiny, tiny, tiny things. So, how many of them are there? You mentioned 1,000 electrodes. How many threads are there, and what do the electrodes have to do with the threads?
Yeah, so the current instantiation of the device has 64 threads, and each thread has 16 electrodes for a total of 1,024 electrodes that are capable of both recording and stimulating. And the thread is basically this polymer insulated wire. The metal conductor is the kind of a tiramisu cake of gold plat tie. And they're very, very tiny wires, 2 micron in width, so 2/1 millionth of meter.
It's crazy that that thing I'm looking at has the polymer insulation, has the conducting material, and has 16 electrodes at the end of it.
On each of those thread.
Yeah, on each of those threads.
Correct.
16. Each one of
Yes,
those.
you're not going to be able to see
64.
it with naked eyes.
And I mean, to state the obvious, or maybe for people who are just listening, they're flexible.
Yes, yes, that's also one element that was incredibly important for us. So each of these thread are, as I mentioned, 16 micron in width, and then they taper to 84 micron, but in thickness, they're less than 5 micron. And in thickness is mostly, polyimide at the bottom and this metal track, and then another polyimide. So 2 micron of polyimide, 400 nanometer of this metal stack, and 2 micron of polyimide sandwiched together to protect it from.
We talking about protecting a device, bro. An object. Why are they using all of our elements to make these dreams, to make these dream states, to put people in this trance? Like we haven't come to cusp. We ain't grew enough. We not mature. Why I mentioned the dog eating its kids that ain't fully that don't have the full 100% capabilities to think and motor skills and all of that. They used to kill those ill beings because it's okay. You'll go where you need to go, or and probably where you need to go is you'll have full capability. When people be going through pregnancy, women or a family, right? Like we always say, like, because I know a few women babies done died, bro, and they done made it to a good age, 8, 9. You know what I'm saying? Or not even that, 5, 6, 3, whatever. But this baby was cognitive at a point. It was walking around doing all it, and then the baby dies of an illness. And it's like, how I get things happen, but we acting like things are not preventable. Like we can't stop it from happening. All the things women doing up until they had their babies, and then your baby come out disfigured and stuff like that, and then she act like she don't know what happened. The men's genes and her genes mixed and made, however, whatever, showing the compatibility in the physical right in front of you. From doing things like this Neuralink shit is gonna, if we keep believing in shit like this, our baby's gonna keep coming out with low iron, being anemic, uh low hemoglobin, and then they keeping our our seeds in there and they fostering our seeds when we should be fostering our seeds.
The environment that is 37 degrees C bag of salt water.
So what's some, maybe can you speak to some
Like, look how they smiling and like this is a good conversation. Like this is perfect for everybody.
interesting aspects of the material design here? Like, what does it take to design a thing like this and to be able to manufacture a thing like this for people who don't know anything about this kind of thing?
Yeah, so the material selection that we have is not, I don't think it was particularly unique. There were other labs, and there are other labs that are kind of looking at similar um, material stack. There's kind of a fundamental question, and still needs to be answered around the longevity and reliability of these microelectrodes that we call, compared to some of the other more conventional neural interfaces devices that are intracranial, so penetrating the cortex, that are more rigid, like the Utah ray, that are these 4 by 4 millimeter kind of silicon shank that have exposed recording site at the end of it. That's been kind of the innovation from Richard Norman back in 1997. It's called the Utah ray because he was at University of Utah.
And what does the Utah array look like? So it's a rigid type of
Yeah, so we can
electrode.
actually look it up. Yeah. Yeah, so it's a bed of needle. Yeah, so we can actually look it up. Yeah. Yeah, so it's a bed of needle. There's
Okay, go ahead.
yeah,
I'm
so
sorry.
those are rigid shank.
Rigid. Yeah, you weren't kidding.
And the size and the number of shanks vary anywhere from 64 to 128. At the very tip of it is an exposed electrode that actually records neural signal. The other thing that's interesting to note is that unlike Neuralink threads that have recording electrodes that are actually exposed iridium oxide recording sites along the depth, this is only at a single depth. So these Utah array spokes can be anywhere between 0.5 millimeters to 1.5 millimeter. And they also have designs that are slanted, so you can have it inserted at different depth. But that's one of the other big differences. And then
Look at this. Look at that thing. Yeah, my son watching me. But look at that. That look like Hellraiser. That look like torture. But look at it. That device is ferrofluidy. Look at it. Yes, I just made that up. Look at the device. Go ahead. Let's listen to him explain this little ugly thing.
the main key difference is the fact that there's no active electronics. These are just electrodes, and then there's a bundle of a wire that you're seeing, and then that actually then exits the craniectomy. Um, that then has this port that you can connect to for any external electronic devices. They are working on or have the wireless telemetry device, but it still requires a through the skin uh, port that actually is one of the biggest failure modes for infection for the system.
What are some of the challenges associated with flexible threads? Like, for example, on the robotics side, R1, implanting those threads. How difficult is that task?
Yeah. So as you mentioned, they're very very difficult to maneuver by hand. These Utah arrays that you saw earlier, they're actually inserted by a neurosurgeon actually positioning it near the site that they want, and then they're actually there's a pneumatic hammer that actually pushes them in. So it's a pretty simple process, and they're easy to maneuver. But for these thin film arrays, they're very tiny and flexible, so they're very difficult to maneuver. So that's why we built an entire robot to do that. And there are other reasons for why we built a robot, and that is ultimately we want this to help millions and millions of people that can benefit from this, and there just aren't that many neurosurgeons out there. Um, and robots can be
No, it's neurosurgeons out here. No neurosurgeons want to do this work, bro. Come on. Do y'all remember all of the people that stepped down like just these past couple of years? Come on, bro. Come on, bro. You lying with a straight face. Nobody wants to have blood on their hands, bro, unless they don't care. They'll do any other type of devious, but I ain't gonna say that because watch. After proving that uh a couple people then did this and survived and been living, people gonna start trying to do it. Watch. They gonna replace that robot. Then that's when it's gonna get more wicked. But they can even control the robot though.
something that we hope can actually do large parts of the surgery. Um, but yeah, the robot is this entire other sort of category of product that we're working on, and it's essentially this multi-axis gantry system that has the specialized robot head that has all of the optics and this kind of a needle retracting mechanism that maneuvers these threads um, via this loop structure that you have on the thread.
So the thread already has a loop structure by which you can grab it.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So this is fascinating. So you mentioned optics. So there's a robot, R1. So for now, there's a human that actually creates a hole in the skull, and then after that, there's a computer vision component that's finding a way to avoid the blood vessels.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're grabbing it by the loop, each individual thread, and placing it in a particular location to avoid the blood vessels.
Mm-hmm.
And also choosing the depth of placement, all that kind of
Correct.
stuff. So controlling every, like the 3D geometry of the placement.
Correct. So the aspect of this robot that is unique is that it's not surgeon assisted or human assisted. It's a semi-automatic or automatic robot. Once obviously there are human component to it when you're placing targets. You can always move it away from kind of major vessels that you see. But I mean, we want to get to a point where one click and it just does the surgery within minutes.
So the computer
Exactly. Exactly. But till then, you have to monitor it. And the monetization, and the monitoring is um I don't think it's always gonna be, how can I say, it's not always gonna be, so, air quotes, innocent. Because one wrong move and you can do some stuff. But you think they're gonna come out with that?
vision component finds great targets,
Mm-hmm.
candidates, and the
Mm-hmm.
human kind of approves them. And the robot does it do like one thread at a time, or does it do
It does one
parallel?
thread at a time, and that's actually also one thing that we uh, are looking at ways to do multiple threads at a time. There's nothing stopping from it. You can have multiple kind of engagement mechanisms, but right now it's one by one, and we also still do quite a bit of just kind of verification to make sure that it got inserted. If so, how deep? Did it actually match what was programmed in, and so on and so forth.
And the actual electrodes are placed at differing depths in the it's very small differences, but differences.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that there's some reasoning behind that, as you mentioned, like it gets more varied signal.
Yeah, we try to place them all around 3 or 4 millimeter from the surface, just because the span of the electrode, those 16 electrodes that we currently have in this version, spans, roughly around 3 millimeters. So we want to get all of those in the brain.
This is fascinating. Okay, so there's a million questions here. If we go zoom in specifically on the electrodes, so what is your sense? How many neurons is each individual electrode listening to?
Yeah, each electrode can record from anywhere between 0 to 40, as I mentioned, right, earlier. But practically speaking, we only see about at most like 2 to 3. And you can actually distinguish which neuron it's coming from by the shape of the spikes.
Oh, cool.
So I mentioned the spike detection algorithm that we have. It's called BOSS algorithm, Buffer Online Spike Sorter.
Nice.
It actually outputs at the end of the day 6 unique values, which are kind of the amplitude of these like negative going hump, middle hump, like positive going hump, and then also the time at which these happen. And from that, you can have kind of a statistical probability, kind of the amplitude of these like negative going hump, middle hump, like positive going hump, and then also the time at which these happen. And from that, you can have kind of a statistical probability estimation of is that a
So boom, when you having too many negative humps, they can send a signal through for positive humps. Just like that simple. Like it's that simple. Where you having a middle hump, you should have a negative hump. They gonna send through a negative hump signal. Like, come on, man.
spike? Is it not a spike? And then based on that, you could also determine, oh, that spike looks different than that spike, must come from a different neuron.
Okay, so that's a nice signal processing step from which you can then make much better predictions about if there's a spike,
Yeah.
especially in this kind of context where there could be multiple neurons screaming. And that also results in you being able to compress the data better.
Yeah.
In the end of the day. Okay. That's
And just to be clear, I mean, the labs do this what's called spike sorting. Usually, once you have these like broadband, like the fully digitized signals, and then you run a bunch of different set of algorithms to kind of tease apart. It's just all of this for us is done on the device
on the device.
in a very low power, custom, built ASIC digital processing unit.
Highly heat constrained.
And the processing time from signal going in and giving you the output is less than a microsecond, which is a very, very short amount of time.
Oh yeah, so the latency has to be super short.
Correct.
Oh wow. Oh, that's a pain in the ass.
Yeah, latency is this huge thing that you have to deal with. Right now, the biggest source of latency comes from the Bluetooth. The way in which they're packetized, and we bin them in 15 millisecond.
Oh, interesting. So it's communication constraint. Is there some potential innovation there on the protocol used?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, Bluetooth is definitely not our final wireless communication protocol that we want to get to. It's a highly
hence the N1 and the R1. I imagine that increases
NX RX.
Yeah, that's the communication protocol, because Bluetooth allows you to communicate against farther distances than you need to, so you can go much shorter.
Yeah, the primary motivation for choosing Bluetooth is that, I mean, everything has Bluetooth.
All right, so you can talk to any device.
Interoperability is just absolutely essential, especially in this early phase. And in many ways, if you can access a phone or a computer, you can do anything.
So then we got the Bluetooth. What was that Viking? I'm on the wrong thing. But y'all, this stuff be going back to damn forever. Harald Bluetooth, King of Denmark, introduced Christianity to Denmark and consolidated his rule over most of Jutland and Zealand. Harald Bluetooth. Old Norse, dude. He was the son of King Gorm, the old conversation, rebellion, the wake of the Ottomans. The Bluetooth wireless specification design was named after the king in 1997, based on an analogy that the technology would unite devices the way Harald Bluetooth united the tribes of Denmark into a single kingdom. The Bluetooth logo consists of a younger futhark bind rune for his initials, H and B. The H is in the B. This is crazy, ain't it? Scandinavian. Runic alphabet reduced form the elder futhark with only 16 characters. The Bluetooth wireless specification was named King 99. Analogy technology unites devices. Wait, see, and then he introduced Christianity. Hold on, let's read maybe conversion to Christianity because this is deep. This is deep. This will give you a lot of insight on why and how. King Harold Bluetooth's conversion to Christianity is a contested bit of history, not least because medieval writers such as I hate their names, Adam of Bremen, give conflicting accounts of how it came about. Widukind of Corvey, writing during the lives of King Harold and Otto, claims that Harold was converted by a cleric by the name of Papa, who when asked by Harold to prove his faith in Christ, carried a great weight of iron heated by fire without being burned. According to 12th century Danish historian Saxo Grammaticus, in his work Gesta Danorum, Papa performed his miracle for Harold's son, Sween Forkbeard. Bro, these niggas' names are dumb. After Swain had second thoughts about his own baptism. Wow. Harold himself converted to Catholicism after a peace agreement with the Holy Roman Emperor. Because shit, him converting to Christianity and him trying to unite the whole Scandinavian, that's vampirism. That's preying on your people. If they ain't going on what you going on, then hey, it's like what you here for? These people crazy. Adam of Bremen, writing 100 years after King Harold's death in history of the archbishops of Hamburg, Bremen, Freemasons, bro, or Masons, or Templars, whatever. Finished in 1076, describes Harold being forcibly converted by Otto. See, after a defeat in battle. However, Widukind does not mention such an event in his contemporary all that shit. The Deeds of the Saxons, or Three Books of Annals. Some 250 years after the event, Heimskringla relates that Harold was converted with Earl Hakon by Otto II. A cleric named Papa, perhaps the same one, also appears in Adam of Brahman's history, but in connection with Eric of Sweden. Papa, father, he taught himself father, who has supposedly conquered Denmark. The fact that Eric conquered Denmark during the realm of Sweyn Forkbeard is explained by Saxo as a punishment of Sweyn's apostasy. The story of this otherwise unknown Papa, or Papa's miracle and baptism of Harold, is also depicted on the gilded altarpiece in the church of Tamdrup in Denmark. The altar itself dates to about 1200. Adam of Bremen's claim regarding Otto the First and Harold appears to have been inspired by an attempt to manufacture a historical reason for the archbishops of Hamburg, Bremen to claim jurisdiction over Denmark, and thus the rest of Scandinavia. In 1070s, the Danish king was in Rome asking for Denmark to have its own archbishop, in Adam's account of Harold's supposed conversion and baptism of both him and his little son Sweyn. With Otto serving as Sweyn's godfather, is followed by the ambiguous, unambiguous claim that at the time Denmark on the side of the sea, which called Jutland by the inhabitant, was divided into three dioceses and subjected to the bishopric of Hamburg. Yeah. Jellingstone. Yeah, the Holy Roman Empire for sure influenced that change to Christianity. The Bluetooth logo. But yeah, I just wanted to show y'all the Neurolink and DJ CO explain it to y'all. No, I'm out. Might be back later. Critique it, share it, subscribe, do what you do.